critical aspect of the Marcellus Shale issue. So you probably are all familiar that every single time this comes up in the media, the way the Marcellus Shale debate is characterized is that it's the economy versus, the environment. This is going to be a great boom for the economy, and we've got to decide, is it, can we handle, is it worth running the risk to get this great economic benefit? And part of what I want to argue today is that that's only part of the story. That the other part of the story is that it's also the economy versus the economy. That the simple picture that this is definitely a good thing is not necessarily true. That there's a lot of pluses and minuses and things that need to be taken into consideration. And part of what sent me on this tack is a paper that I came across by a professor who was at the time at the University of Wisconsin, and I'll show that paper later on. But I want to kick off with a quote from that, where this guy did a review of various economic studies that have been done of they call mining, resource extraction. It can be mining, coal, it can be mining metals, it can be mining oil and natural gas. And looking at the literature over the last 20, 30 years, his bottom line was that until or unless future studies produce dramatically different findings than what he got, there appears to be no scientific basis for accepting the widespread, obvious assumption that mining will lead to economic improvement. And I'll show you some of the data from that paper on down the line. But in other words, there's this conventional wisdom that gas drilling, oil drilling, coal, whatever, is definitely a good thing for the local economy. And the reality often is that it's not. And that's what I want to get to as we progress through the talk. But as I'm saying, it's not a simple question, and it's really hard on an individual basis. When you meet an individual landowner or come up to an individual rural person or farmer, and they are faced with the prospect of trying to pay all those property taxes or make the payments on the farm, and there's this prospect of a lot of income from a gas drilling, it makes a lot of sense one-on-one to pursue that. But what I'm going to argue is if we take a look back at the community-wide effects, it doesn't necessarily make sense for the entire community. And it's that conflict, that problem of individual rational decisions leading to a negative, irrational result for the whole community that makes this issue so hard. And that's kind of what we're going to come to. So first, a couple disclaimers. For myself, I think I've mentioned this already. I am not an economist. Okay? I'm a physicist. And the reason I'm talking about this is that I think that the information needs to be out there. And so my qualifications are, not to be too facetious, but that I can read. Okay? What I've done is I've read several papers that have come out there, and I'll mention them in just a minute. And in the back of the room, there's a list of all the publications we're looking at today and stuff I'm drawing on. And so I've read some reports by Penn State and the report done for Broome County and some other reports from groups out west and some critiques of some of the various studies. And I've tried to bring all that information together, and that's what I can present you here tonight. When I'm presenting anything that's really my own analysis, I'll try to identify it as such. But in general, either it's going to be something that I'm taken from one of the reports or something I've taken from what an economist said that was critical of one of the reports. And I'll try to make that obvious as we go through. So first off, just for those who might be thinking that here in Tompkins County we don't have to worry about this, I showed the picture out of the draft SGIS that many of you have probably seen. And notice that the sweet spot, that is the most likely good region of gas, the Marcellus Shale, does run right through Tompkins County. Matter of fact, where we're standing right now is kind of ground zero for the fairway in New York State. So folks in Danby, Dryden, and Caroline, this is something that is definitely here, and as Tony and Graffi has often pointed out, that line is not firm. It might drift, north or south, but definitely Tompkins County is on the edge of the fairway. All right, so what we're going to be looking at are two different kinds of studies, and I will tell you, as Chris and I were paging through the slides, he said, "Jesus, not too many pictures in there." And so I will apologize compared to other talks. There's not a lot of photos. This is kind of words and numbers, and so I'll apologize up front for that. But there's two kinds of studies that are out there. One is a prospective study. Now, it's something that says, let's look at an economy, say here, upstate New York, Pennsylvania, and say if gas drilling happens, this is what we anticipate will happen to the economy. We're going to take now going forward. The other kind of big study is a comparative study, which says, let's go somewhere in the real world, and let's look at comparable situations. Maybe it's one place over time, or maybe it's different places that are somehow comparable, and one of them has one path due to economic resource extraction, one maybe doesn't follow that path, and let's compare what happened to their economies. So we have prospective studies and comparative studies. And what you're going to see is the prospective studies, at least that I've seen so far, are uniformly glowing and positive, and the comparative studies are not so. And it's that disconnect between the modeling and the real world that I really want to get at. So again, these are all listed on a sheet of paper in the back, so if you want to get them, please take that, and it also has the URL links to them. But out of Penn State, there's a couple different reports. The first one about a year ago called The Emerging Giant, and then they did an update to that came out just a few months ago. And also many of you have probably seen the Broome County report that was done by a couple of Texas academics done for Broome County. And then there's several other things I'm going to look at that are, again, are more real-world based rather than just prospective studies. Jeffrey Jacquette, who is currently a grad student at Cornell, has done something called Energy Boomtowns and Natural Gas. And then there's a couple of other studies. This is the literature review I was talking about. And then the Headwaters Economics is a nonprofit economic research group out west. And they've got a number of important publications. This is just one of them. Okay, and then when the economists that I'm drawing on who have brought some critical voices to this, David Kay, who is also at Cornell, he's a senior extension associate, wrote some comments on the draft SGIS that I've pulled on. Many of you have heard about the Jeanette Barth paper, Unanswered Questions about the Economic Impact. And again, I show you how to get that report if you want to see it on the sheet in the back. And also there's a nonpartisan group down in Pennsylvania called the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center, and they've put out some information on severance tax issues and other things related to some of the Penn State reports. So again, when it's expert opinion you want, that's where I'm going to, rather than me. Okay, so what's in some of these things? So really, my goal here tonight, in part, is to make sure that everyone knows what's in there. And I'm going to bring up some things on all the studies that I think are better or worse. If my criticism is a little harsher on these prospective studies, it's because I'm afraid that they actually do stand on much shakier ground than some of the comparative studies.